Hi all and welcome to another week of the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. I hope you're all snuggled up, nice by the fire, as what is now known as the Lee Canop season has kicked in. And it's a bit freezing at the moment. So we've got quite a packed show for you tonight. It will probably run on a little bit longer than normal shows, as we have a lot to cover. No Q&A, but we have some laughs along the way, and plenty to reveal, and we'll have fun. Right, first things first. The Saskatchewan, nearly got it right, story that I had in the news section last week on removing smart meters turned out it was a loop story. So apparently that never went ahead, and my apologies on that. And this is kind of the stuff they keep putting out in the alt media, the old news stories, and generally I check them, but sometimes I get too busy, and that was one of them. A few things I want to cover before we get into the news, because it has been asked. Neither Kim or Kim's will have a website. The trust and the trustee are a private entity unto itself. That's why it was called the Unknown Country previously. It had no domain. It just ruled over everything, or reigned over everything. And it does not require a website. I know people keep asking for it, but the point is, the trust is not selling or promoting anything. That's what some people misunderstand. In essence, THI is the website. A week where you find out that not only Spreaker are slashing our listeners' numbers by over 50%, nice try, but Facebook is also deleting and cutting our numbers by several hundred. They got caught out this week, lowering the numbers, oh my. Plus you find out some members are being blocked from getting onto MeWe. And it's all going on now. You know, when you consider it's not bad interference for a tiny man and a tiny group, is it? You know, I would sooner be called a tiny man and group, but it's better than having a tiny mind and no heart. But there you go. Now, one of our members this week was moving home, and a regular member offered to help. And this is what pleases me most about doing THI, and it's what THI is all about, getting people to come together and supporting each other. Now, all was going smoothly until right near the end, but our own version of the good, not Samaritan, but good person, stepped forward into the role and rescued the day for both of them. The dame rode up on a shiny armoured 2005 GMC Savannah and saved the day, thanks to her. And it's nice to see and hear how some of the members are now starting to meet up. THI Oregon all came together recently and had a lot of fun together by all accounts. And that follows on from what I know anyway, Florida, Sweden and Ireland, and it's good to hear. Right, the good, the bad and the ugly describes the next few pieces about the alt media, and it is getting bad. The alt media, as predicted, has now gone into complete meltdown, and they're all calling each other out, exposing each other and themselves. And here's a few more examples of the collapse of the Loop News people alt media. Bear in mind, we're having enough of our troubles of our own within our group. There are people from the Keenan team, Cosmic Voice, ITNJ and the Blue Chicken elements are in our group trying to disrupt again. So I ask all members to stay vigilant, and a warning that the end piece will likely leave you with a stitch in your sides due to laughing hysterically. So there's a warning ahead. The first piece is Alfred Weber, it appears, and co. are now going after Randy Kramer. You know, if only Alfred vetted his own guests in the same way. And one of our members sends me his guest list from time to time. And I do wonder if why I have any neck left or forehead by shaking or slamming my head against the desk. You know, 95% of the people who go on his show appear to be complete BS artists. But anyway, Alfred and his sidekick Andrew Basiago has spoken with the former wife of Randy Kramer with regards to Kramer's alleged service in the US Marine Corps and also on Mars. Now, Randy Kramer's former wife reportedly told Andrew Basiago that Kramer had never been in the Marine Corps and has never been to Mars. Go figure. And that he was a former bartender who made up these fictions for profit and attention because he is a pathological liar, according to his wife, which was the cause of the marital breakdown. And Alfred went on to say, for full details, I urge you to call US chrononaut and Mars astronaut Andrew D. Basiago. Really? Chrononaut? Oh dear. They had clones back then. Why would they send humans? I'm not sure any ex-wife is going to tell you the real truth, but I digress. Whether Kramer was a Marine or not, I don't know or don't care, to be quite honest. What I do know is Randy Kramer now works for the SSP. He contacted us last year for funding. Having said in the call, the SSP's got lots of money and then asked for funds. Now, the kickback to this is that Corey Goode copied some of Kramer's story and moulded it into his own fiction, which he told a select few he's going to do back on the Avalon Forum in late 2013, early 2014 time. And this is what these people have been doing in the alt media. You know, bear in mind, Corey Goode is an FBI infraguard agent and was also employed by the agencies on how to train trolls and shills for the alt media, you know, which he admitted to live on air on a Gaia TV show. And this is what we've been exposing. Now, what I'm also hearing is both Wilcock and Corey Goode are now facing several high-profile lawsuits for plagiarising other people's work. Time will tell. The latest round of information brought to you today by the letter L and the number 2 from Anna von Reitz, who has launched another donation-based website, eerily reminiscent of our $1 plan, but that's fine, as I know it would work if people got behind it. And our latest is a rehash of the old strawman, legalese, reclaim your debt, titles and other things that has got people into trouble previously, or got people into more debt and or jailed. You know, asking people to fill in all kinds of papers with their social security number, their passport numbers, virtually all the private details of their lives. And yet we have some who complain or objecting to put their real name on Facebook or MeWe. Yet, fully enough, nobody asks Anna von Reitz why she's asking for all the personal details. Nobody questions that. But these people that are on the internet telling you not to have a driver's license and reclaim homes and get money back from the government or the Treasury, and worse, not pay taxes, are negligent at best and dangerous to the people at worst. Anna von Reitz herself never paid her taxes and ended up in court. And even with all their legal expertise being a judge and standing as a secretary to the Nazi Pope, she lost her cases in court, not only her tax case, but she also lost her home as well. You know, she's extremely knowledgeable of legalese, which is babble, and yet she failed in court twice. So what chance do us plebs have going in their courts with little to no understanding of how it works in their system? And that's the key, their system, not ours. And she knows this and should not be that irresponsible in pushing others into doing it. That she failed in her own court cases, as Heather Giraffe found out to her own cost. She ended up in court, and that ended with her in jail. She was told she was going after the wrong treasury. She didn't listen. But she's no innocent bystander either, because she's got background, despite her working previously for Jacob Rothschild, and also as the lead bank inspector for the IMF. They don't tell you that, do they? Now, Anna's Lacist is claiming back funds from the government, all $25 trillion. That belongs to the people, she said. And that's fine, I agree to a point. The people are owed millions of dollars each on birth certificates alone. But this is the key question. Who is going to pay for it, Anna? The government has no money. The Treasury has no money. Banks have no money. The bloodline families which you represent, funds are dwindling, which is why they're doing fire sales. The military or the DOD has no money. So who is going to pay back these funds? And how, if they are paid back, are you going to justify or balance the books of a $25 trillion injection? Because if you don't balance it, the American economy and subsequently the world economy will collapse before the bell finishes chiming on the Wall Street opening. You know, what part do you not understand?
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
If her answer is the trust, I would then ask why the bloodline families she represents, when they had control of the trust, did they not give the funds back to the people then? You know, is this the same trust that Anna von Reitz declared non-existent at first and then retracted? And then she said the trustee was a fake and a fraud and not the real trustee, only to retract again. The same trustee who's been trying to get funds out to the people for the last 3 or 4 years, only to be blocked by the same bloodline families groups and her partners in crime, Langley 2 and 3. Perhaps she needs to speak to them, as Kim's been ready to deliver the funds back to the people for a long time now. Next piece. Some people don't like that certain members are removed from the group, and I do get that. People get close and become friends and whatnot. But it's mine and the admin's task to protect the group for your benefit. You know, our group does get a lot more attention from humanity sellouts than most think possible. And all those, I remind any new members, all those who are removed get several warnings before being removed from the group. So instead of criticising the admins for removing your friends or people, you should ask your friends, why they ignored several warnings to act right. Anyway, I received a message from the Australian tribe people this week, wanting for Kim and I to have another call with them, as they've done some path clearing since the last call we had with them, which didn't go too well. You know, they're going down the legalese route. It won't work. It just won't work. But hopefully, as time's passed, that they are correcting that. Now, apparently they themselves had concerns about our former member Jennifer Marquis Bell also, and have removed her from the group, citing her for suspect intentions and agendas were being ran against them. Like I always say, time always tells. Now, subsequently this week, I received a nice email from Jennifer herself, denying certain things she was accused of, but admitting her responsibility in other fields and requesting we all move on, which is fine by me. You know, I have far more pressing things to be dealing with than this type of nonsense. But the question is, why can't people act right to begin with? You know, not doing so just replicates the old control system behaviours, and we will not succeed in anything doing that. Now, one caveat which Jennifer reminded me, as I've mentioned a few times, that the Oz tribe were the ones that signed the deal with the Draco 16,500 years ago, and their modern descendants are doing their best to correct the error of their ancestors from the past. Final piece before we go into the news on the alt media tonight, and this is up there with the best of the lunacy Kent Dunn has to offer. It really boggles the mind. You know, the alt media is literally collapsing under its own bullshittery now. Please find a stable chair, or preferably lie down, and do not drink during this short piece. I swear this woman is a Clinton.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It is November the 14th, 2019. I'm Cindy K. Courier. This morning I made a video asking, what if I ran for president? And since this morning I've been thinking, and I realize that if I ran for president, I'd be the only candidate not controlled by the banks. I'd be the only candidate not working for corporate interests. I'd be the only candidate running on land jurisdiction. And I'd be the only candidate who's ever created a money system, a sound money system for the people. And I'd be the only candidate who really knew how to make a deal that the American people could not refuse. So, Mr. Trump, and whomever else shows up in the field, I challenge y'all to a duel. Yep. I hereby announce my candidacy for President of the United States of America.
Oh dear, I told you it was going into meltdown. That woman's completely off a trolley, literally. You know, how people listen to her is beyond me. But Cindy K. Courier, President of the United States. Oh dear. Fun, this game, isn't it? Right, let's get into some more serious stuff. Well, here's some more fun in a roundabout way, and again proving what we've said all along. And the younger brother of an alleged cryptocurrency fraudster is now on the run after swindling $4 billion out of investors. Has pled guilty to financial crimes. Konstantin Ignatov pleaded guilty to 2 counts of wire fraud, 1 count of bank fraud and 1 count of money laundering as part of a deal that was unsealed in New York on Tuesday that will see him inform on his former co-conspirators. Now, as part of the deal, Ignatov, who is thought to be connected with the Bulgarian mafia, I think our members know who that is now, has been offered witness protection amid fears he and his family will be threatened. In return for information, prosecutors have said that they were agreed to drop all charges except for any tax violations he is found to have committed, and the case is linked to OneCoin, which is a cryptocurrency company founded in 2014 by Ignatov's Oxford-educated older sister, Ruja, and is based in Bulgaria. CIA then. Ignatova marketed the coin as a rival to Bitcoin based on the same blockchain technology which came out of Langley and the NSA that keeps track of transactions without a, quote, centralized banking ledger. There's your decentralizing. And rewarding those who host parts of the ledger with coins that can be traded. Now, in court last week, Ignatov revealed that he'd already received death threats from OneCoin investors angry that they were duped. Should have listened. And he claimed that someone in Sofia, the Bulgarian capital, put a gun in his back, bundled him into a minivan and drove him to the outskirts of the city. CIA again then. And Ignatov also claimed he was confronted by the Hells Angels, who were also linked with the agencies. And also part of that investigation is Mark Scott, a former attorney and US citizen, and he's accused of laundering some $400 million of OneCoin cash using a series of shell companies between 2016 and 18. Beggars belief. People will invest that amount in fresh air tokens, but it is what it is. More than 200 people have been blinded in a month after riot police hit them with shotgun pellets amid violent protests in Chile. Hundreds of people have been hit in the eye with rubber bullets during the protests, sparking a health crisis in its own right. And Chile's top medical body said 230 people had lost their sight, of whom 50 will need a prosthetic eye. And the doctor said this doesn't mean the patient will doesn't lose their vision, but they will lose their actual eye. This is according to Dr. Patricio Metza at the Medical College of Chile. He said, we're facing a real health crisis, a health emergency, given that in such few days we have had the highest number of cases involving serious ocular complications due to shots in the eye. Now, there's been growing anger over police brutality and prompted Chilean singer Mon Laferte to stage a topless protest at Latin Grammy Awards in Vegas last week. And the Chileans are enraged over inequality and also low wages, and are demanding reforms to healthcare, education, the pension system and also the constitution. Now, the country's embattled leader or president, Sebastián Piñera, has announced several measures in a bid to appease the public mood, but the protesters want him to quit. A growing array of countries now where the people are saying we've had enough. This is something that could have gone in the sub-intel. You know, I've warned about the medical people, how they're not interested in our health, and you'll find out more later on. This is two stories, one after the other, And it's sickening, really. But this is what happens when greed overtakes common sense in many ways. A Virginia doctor was accused of performing unnecessary surgical procedures on his patients, has been ordered held without bail while he awaits trial at a court. As a court was told, 173 women have alleged malpractice. Dr. Javed Perwaiz was charged last week with healthcare fraud after authorities said he performed unneeded procedures on many of his patients, including hysterectomies and tubal ligations. The magistrate judge Robert Krask ordered Perwaiz held without bail after the prosecutor said 173 women have come forward since his arrest on November the 8th to describe similar experiences, and the judge called the allegations deeply disturbing, whilst Perwaiz's attorney said he'd received a flood of unsolicited emails from patients praising and supporting the doctor. Yeah, right. Now, in a 4-year period starting January 2014, he was found to have performed surgery on 510 patients, with 42% of them having undergone at least 2 operations. And the prosecutors also alleged that he defrauded insurance companies by claiming fictitious ailments and charging healthcare providers for false claims. And records also show that Perwaiz has been investigated for medical malpractice. A South Dakota neurosurgeon has been accused of making millions of dollars by performing unnecessary and dangerous surgeries, including one that left the patient partially paralyzed. Dr. Wilson Asfoura enriched himself by using medical devices he invented during surgeries and receiving kickbacks from companies whose devices he used, without disclosing the arrangements. Now, the Department of Justice alleges in the lawsuit filed on Wednesday that Asfoura performed complex spinal surgeries that shouldn't have been done and has left at least one patient partially paralysed. This is according to the Argus Sanford Health, the health system where Asfoura was working when he performed the surgeries in question, has also settled a whistleblower lawsuit for $20 million in penalties late last month. Like I said, if you think this is a one bad apple scenario, think again. These doctors are all on kickbacks. They get paid on how many vaccines and flu shots they give, and it's all about boosting their own wallets. Inventing surgeries. We had that doctor, I think was in Wisconsin, who told hundreds of people that they had cancer when they never. When it works out around $300,000 per cancer patient, you can understand why. Sickening. Not only are they going to change the phones, as warned, sometime during winter, only 5G will work, though I was told directly by Verizon and another service provider, but now they're telling you that if you have an older Samsung Smart TV, that you will have to get an upgrade, especially if you use Netflix. Netflix will stop working on these older Samsung Smart TVs and other streaming devices beginning December the 1st due to technical limitations, they said. And Netflix will no longer be supported on 2010 and 2011 TVs beginning on December the 1st. So if you've got one of them, you're not going to be able to watch Netflix. Here's another technical issue that's cropped up, and it may surprise no one, as it looks like Facebook's iPhone app may be spying on you. Well, I never. As reported this week by TNW, Twitter user Joshua Maddox recently discovered that the Facebook app on his iPhone was up to something unusual, observing that his camera was actually engaged in the background while he was simply scrolling through his Facebook feed. Now, the issue only came to light because of a bug in the current version, they always call it a bug, of Facebook app on iOS 13.2.2 that leaves the main feed slightly misaligned after you open a photo and then swipe it down. Now, this guy confirmed that he was able to duplicate the issue on 5 other iPhones that are running the iOS 13.2.2, although one running iOS 12 didn't show the camera. So essentially what they've done is, because they've been cut off, we told you about this in previous shows, about those security clearances, they're adding new apps and opening doors again. So it said you may want to look at all the other apps that you've given access to on your iPhone camera, as any iOS app that has this access could be secretly recording you. As a more extreme measure, you could always follow the advice of former FBI Director James Comey and put a piece of tape over your camera. And whilst this may seem a bit paranoid, the fact that Mark Zuckerberg, with a silent F, himself tapes over his webcam should make you think. Mark Zuckerberg tapes over his webcam. Oh my. Next piece of technology. The new Apple hardware that debuted at the company's event in September on the iPhone 11 and the iPhone 11 Pro, along with the Apple Watch Series 5. You may have missed the part where Apple mentioned it would be releasing a new research app to invite users to participate in 3 new health studies. And the announcement itself has tucked into the debut of the Apple Watch Series 5 and Watch OS 6, which also brought Apple's new noise and cycle tracking apps along with it. Now, these new user-facing apps were designed to help users allegedly protect their hearing and help women track their menstrual cycles directly. Really? Oh dear. But it also forms part of 3 new health initiatives that Apple is undertaking in partnership with leading medical institutions. So what they're telling you is they're going to spy on your health. Still think those Fitbits and all those other things are something useful? No, they're loading your information into a database, which is then sent to insurance companies, and then all your medical insurance goes up without you knowing it. A law making it compulsory for children who attend school or daycare to be vaccinated for measles has been passed in Germany this week, and Germany's parliament approved the government's bill last Thursday with a majority of 459 in favour, 89 against and 105 abstentions. Now, the law means parents who cannot prove their children have been vaccinated for measles by August the 1st, 2021, will have to pay a fine of €2,500, which is $2,790, And the Health Minister Jens Spahn argued the compulsory vaccination is necessary because of an increase of the highly contagious and potentially deadly disease. Now, some parents and doctors have opposed the measure, and teachers and daycare workers, staff in hospitals and residents of refugee shelters will also have to be vaccinated. Now, Germany has recorded 501 cases of measles so far this year. This push on vaccinations is suggestive of a programme that has failed in its original format. It's the same as the climate change. Global warming failed, so they roll out a new one. And it is a key victory for the alt media by us highlighting it, that they have to go to these lengths. And I have to say that getting desperate and petty enough to get petulant to find a new way to implement control. But people must resist their threats. You know, the lawsuits alone tells you these are clearly not working for and by the people. And fake politicians like the Canadian woman last week or so, staging non-vaccinated events, should be named and shamed. And it also shows you an example of why we shouldn't have these vaccines. You know, $2,800 ballpark. Fine. Okay, don't send the kids to school then. They'll soon panic, because that takes away another one of their programs, you see. If everyone says we're not going to school, you have to remember school is a program. They soon change tune. Protests have erupted across Iran after the government unexpectedly announced it was rationing petrol or gas and increasing its price. Now, at least 2 people have been killed in the riots. Now, prices rose by at least 50% on Friday as subsidies on petrol were reduced, and the authorities say they want to free up money to help the poor in Iran. Now, Iran is already suffering economically due to stiff sanctions imposed by the US after Washington decided to pull out of the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. Now, under the new measures, a lot of Europeans and Americans are going to laugh at this, but that's their economy. It's different. Each motorist is allowed to buy 60 litres, which is about 13 gallons, of petrol per month at 15,000 rials, which is 13 cents a gallon. 13 cents a litre, which is 65 cents a gallon for gas. And each additional litre then costs 30,000 rials. And previously drivers were allowed up to 250 litres at 10,000 rials per litre. So now it's gone up to 15. So their prices initially were roughly 8 cents a litre, which ballpark is 40 cents a gallon. Now, the revenues gained from removing subsidies on petrol will be used for cash payments for low-income households, according to the government. Subintel. It's said that we're going to end up with millions more electric cars in the next few years. And all the batteries and the wiring and the processors and the charging points will need quite a lot of raw materials, particularly one material over others. Now, last year the German giant Volkswagen tried to corner the market in cobalt, and suppliers of lithium are also in hot demand. And copper has never been so badly needed, it is said. and with renewable power like wind and solar being installed at a frantic pace, every turbine and every panel also requires these key metals. Now, when you add in the boom in consumer electronics, there are real concerns, oh, here we go with the scarcity again, about future supplies. Now, with cobalt alone, it is estimated that by 2025, Volkswagen alone will need 1/3 of the current entire global supply for its electric cars. And massive new battery factories are being constructed, like Tesla owner Elon Musk's famous Gigafactory, and they too will be hungry for cobalt. Now, Mr. Bram Merton, a geologist with the UK's National Oceanography Centre, said that if all cars on Europe's roads are electric by 2040, and if they use the same kind of batteries as the Tesla Model 3, that would require 28 times more cobalt than is currently produced now. And at the moment, more than 60% of all cobalt comes from the Democratic Republic of Congo. For decades, allegations of corruption and human rights abuses have swirled around parts of its mining industry, and last year Amnesty International said there were children as young as 7 working in the Congo's cobalt mines in nano man-made tunnels at a risk of fatal accidents and serious lung disease. Microsoft, Renault and Huawei were also there among the companies named as failing to check if their supplies of cobalt involved child labour. Now, the story of 5,000 dead from measles in the Congo is linked to this story. It's genocide for minerals program again. On Friday morning, the consequences of his efforts to sabotage, it is said, a congressional investigation that threatened his longtime friend President Trump, Mr. Roger Stone, was convicted in federal court of 7 felonies for obstructing the congressional inquiry, lying to investigators under oath, and trying to block the testimony of a witness whose account would have exposed his lies. Now, jurors deliberated for a little over 7 hours before convicting him on all accounts. Now, together the charges carry a maximum prison term of 50 years, and Mr. Stone's in trouble. Now, personally, I don't know enough about Roger Stone to state whether his actions were that way or not. But what I don't get is how he went to court and was convicted that way, which is fine if it's all correct, but how another official who did exactly the same thing got a slap on the wrist and is currently still working for the State Department. Hello, James Comey. It's that inconsistencies again. Next two pieces are from Kenya. A small town, Kenyan town, situated close to the Somali border, and one non-government organisation, NGO, has made a remarkable stride towards achieving quite a feat. The NGO, known as Give Power, is to thank for this new solar water treatment plant that they've built, and residents of the small Kenyan town of Kiunga have already said their lives have been positively impacted by this new development, and as a result of the success of the new solar water treatment, Give Power plans to extend its program to other parts of Africa and the Earth. Now, according to reports published by the world bodies UNICEF and WHO indeed, less than 2 months ago, 1 in every 3 persons does not have access to readily drinking water, and this water crisis is especially prominent in areas of the sub-Saharan Africa, which made it the perfect locale to install the first solar plant system. Now, the plant has been in operation now since 2018, and its main objective is to transform salt water from the Indian Ocean into clean drinking water. And after the success with the Kenyan town, they're hoping to expand this technology over to Haiti and also Colombia. Now, traditionally, it was always said it is rather expensive, the desalination process, as the result of a high amount of power usage used to carry out the process. Subsequently, it can be done in areas that had the resources to not only produce but also distribute that much energy. But this technology tackled this issue through what is referred to as solar water farms that produces approximately 50 kilowatts of energy stored by high-performance Tesla batteries along with 2 water pumps that operate 24/7. So the people of that small town are now getting proper clean drinking water, so kudos to them. Next, this is something we've been warning about several times in the show, and the Kenyan government risks losing the lucrative Mombasa port to China should the country fail to repay huge loans advanced by Chinese lenders. I think I was still in Cosmic Voice when I warned of this. China, because of the transfer of all power over to the east, or so they thought, was collecting dollars like they were going out of fashion, and at one point they had 80% of all the dollars that had been produced. Then they realised it wasn't going their way and started dumping the dollars by buying up all kinds of stuff and offering loans with a high payback. And this is how they've acquired several of certain countries' ports and airports and you name it. Now, in November, the African Stand reported on how Kenya is now at high risk of losing strategic assets over huge Chinese debt. And just after a few months, the Chinese are now about to take action, it is said. Now, the loans have been granted for the development of the standard gauge railway, and also at stake is the inland container depot in Nairobi, which receives and dispatches freight hauled on the new cargo trains from the seaport. Now, implications of a takeover would be grave, including the thousands of port workers who would be forced to work under these Chinese lenders. Management changes would immediately follow the port seizure, since the Chinese would naturally want to secure their own interests, and further revenues from the port would be directly sent to China for the servicing of an estimated 500 billion lent for the construction of the 2 sections of the railway. So this is essentially what happens. That it's the Chinese and the control system, the Rothschilds, who want the railway. They get the country to pay for it. They lend the money. Then they know they can't pay back the money, and then they take the railway off them, or the port, or the airport. This is what they've been doing. Now, in December 2017, the Sri Lankan government lost its Hambantota port to China for a lease period of 99 years after failing to show commitment in the payment of billions of dollars in loans. In September 2018, Zambia lost Kenneth Kaunda International Airport to China over debt repayment. Also in 2018, China has agreed to extend a loan to Botswana for rail and infrastructure, as well as writing off a BWP 80 million debt and the USD 733,000 debt after taking over the Sri Lankan port. Not good. Dennis Tyler, the Democratic mayor of Muncie, Indiana, was arrested on Monday and was executed at Tyler's home by the FBI. Now, Tyler is currently in FBI custody, and Tyler's administration has been under scrutiny for several years now as investigators conducted a federal corruption probe, and earlier this year the city's former building commission was also sentenced to 2 years in prison after pleading guilty to wire fraud and money laundering. I suggest that will go a bit further than just one Democratic mayor and also one state. It's been going on a lot. The next two stories are both linked. Connect the dots. Of course, we had this week Prince Andrew has finally broke his silence on his controversial friendship with the pedophile Jeffrey Epstein in what was a primetime BBC special, which was shown one night this week after apparently 6 months of planning, really. And the Duke of York was interviewed by the Newsnight Emily Maitlis at Buckingham Palace, and Prince Andrew and the Epstein scandal was broadcast on the BBC on Saturday. And at this time when I picked this news item up, the BBC had not released any footage, but Ms. Maitlis said it would be a no-holds-barred interview with no questions vetted by Andrew or the palace officials. And if you believe that, you'll believe anything. And it is believed that the Queen has given her blessings for the interview to go ahead inside the walls of the palace. And it's the first time the Duke has been grilled on his friendship with the American sexual abuser found dead in his New York prison cell 3 months ago. And he will also be confronted with allegations made by Epstein's slave, Virginia Roberts, that she was flown to London on Epstein's private jet, nicknamed the Lolita Express, for sex with the prince, who she has called an abuser. Now, Prince Andrew vehemently denied claims that he slept with Virginia 3 times, including once during an orgy with 9 women on Epstein's private pedo island in the US Virgin Islands, but only ever in pre-prepared statements released by the palace. Now, since that interview, several high-profile sponsors or groups connected with him have disassociated from him, and then this statement came yesterday. The Duke of York says he's stepping back from royal duties because of the Epstein scandal has become a major disruption to the royal family. And he said he had asked the Queen for permission to withdraw for the foreseeable future. Bye. And he said he deeply sympathised with the sex offender Epstein's victims and everyone who wants some form of closure. And he also said, I continue to unequivocally regret my ill-judged association with Jeffrey Epstein. Very clever worded attempt that by Prince Andrew, except some people see through his carefully selected mind memes. That statement and the focus of this has been pushed onto his friendship with Epstein and away from his sexual activities. Have you noticed? It's a typical ploy that they use. He doesn't mention the girl. What he's apologising for is being friends with Epstein. That's not the real issue. If I was him, I would be careful. I hear there's a nice tunnel in Paris for sale again. On Tuesday, Meghan Markle secretly invited former First Lady Hillary Clinton to visit her at Frogmore Cottage, which is her home, Windsor home. And according to sources, the two women hugged during what was described as something of a fangirl meeting. Prince Harry and 6-month-old Archie was there, including Mrs. Clinton, and who expressed delight at cuddling the royal baby. Makes it change some skin in its face, I suppose. And told Meghan about Chelsea's new baby son Jasper, her third grandchildren. Apparently both women have a lot of admiration for each other, and it was all very nice and sweet. Yeah, right. She was there to coach Prince Andrew. They were linked. US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on Monday announced a major reversal of the US long-standing policy on Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank, now rejecting a 1978 State Department legal opinion that deemed the settlements inconsistent with international law. Now, the announcement, which breaks with international law and consensus, is the latest in a string of hardline pro-Israeli moves that are likely to inflame tensions between the Trump administration and the Palestinians. And administration officials said the State Department has been working towards this decision for nearly a year in coordination with the White House's peace team, which is led by Jared Kushner. He's going to get you hung, Mr. Trump. Get him out. Now, the official said the move does not change the administration's position that continued settlement construction is not conducive to an Israeli-Palestinian peace deal. Tick-tock, Mr. Pompeo. Two more pieces before we have a music break and then go into the intel. Benjamin Netanyahu was indicted today, as this show forecast a long time back, on bribery, fraud and breach of trust charges in a set of long-running corruption cases, which apparently throws his political future into doubt and heightening the uncertainty and chaos surrounding Israel's fitful and year-long struggle to choose its next leader. Now, the cases against Netanyahu involve allegations of giving or offering lucrative official favours to several media tycoons in exchange for either favourable coverage in news outlets or gifts worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Sounds like a CIA ploy to me, that. Final piece. As a week of impeachment rolls on, via the organised and disorganised circus tent, claims and counterclaims I see. Personally, I ignore 99% of it, because the whole thing is just like the Russian collusion. And the whole thing could be answered by pretty much one or two questions. Why is it okay for one party to collude and use powers of persuasion, but not another? I recall the Clintons using persuasion with MI6 to dig dirt on Trump via the Steele documents, most of which were fairy tales anyway. But it's not okay for Trump to ask another leader to dig dirt in the Ukraine. In reverse, it was stated that Trump was doing private deals and business in Russia, and that was not okay. But Biden and several other Dems and Republicans, I might add, who are actively doing dodgy deals and businesses in the Ukraine, is okay. You could close the whole impeachment nonsense and congressional hearings by answering those two questions. So they're wasting everybody's time. But the real problem with all of this is the treasonous media, who haven't got a single brain cell combined. You know, these people are just Duracell bots, wound up and given scripts and opinions to read out and then relay to a non-thinking, comatose audience. Perhaps we need to create a new meme with the media. Be truth, not lies. But here's the kicker. November the 10th, 1999. From the White House to the Senate of the United States, with a view to receiving the advice and consent of the Senate for ratification, I transmit herewith the treaty between the United States of America and Ukraine on mutual legal assistance in criminal matters with annex. That was signed at Kiev on July the 22nd, 1998. I transmit also for the information of the Senate an exchange of notes which was signed on September the 30th, 1999, which provides for its provisional application as well as the report of the Department of State with respect to the treaty. The treaty is one of a series of modern mutual legal assistance treaties being negotiated by the United States in order to counter criminal activities more effectively. The treaty should be an effective tool to assist in the prosecution of a wide variety of crimes, including drug trafficking offences. The treaty is self-executing. It provides for a broad range of cooperation in criminal matters. Mutual assistance available under the treaty includes taking of testimony of or statements of persons, providing documents, records and articles of evidence, serving documents, locating or identifying persons, transferring persons in custody for testimony or other purposes, executing requests for searches and seizures, assisting in proceedings related to restraint, confiscation, forfeiture of assets, restitution and collection of fines, and any other form of assistance not prohibited by the laws of the requested state. I recommend that the Senate give early and favourable consideration to the treaty and give its advice and consent to ratification. That was a deal done between America and Ukraine in 1999, allowing both countries to seek evidence of criminality in both countries. Who was it signed by? William J. Rockefeller Clinton. As Q said this week, these people are stupid. I expect we will have a lot more fun between now and then. We'll be back shortly. Hi all and welcome back. Welcome to the House of Fun. Oh dear. Intel. The 11/11 event, stated throughout the alt media, was about the dark forces opening up portals and letting in the armies to create havoc again. Now, at least 2 portals were opened, one in Russia and one in Switzerland, and this was to wreak maximum damage on this planet and turn the tide back in their favour. People doing mass meditations, you have to realise you're being duped into opening up these portals for them via certain chants and incantations within the meditation word magic ritual. Now, the situation was contained and around 150 were dead and 4,000 plus were quarantined, whereby subsequently they all died and returned to source. Now, for those of you who are fighting on that level, use a Faraday cage to contain them. No current-based energy can go into that cage, and so subsequently they can't feed and subsequently die off in the cage. The head and ultimate in dark magicians, known as the Destroyer, and his legions of armies, has now been completely eliminated from all planes of existence. We were aware of this over a week or so ago, but their minions confirmed the event did take place in the now, not the future, the now. And this caused some high-profile peoples to now admit that they are not part of the Order of the Black Sun, and they were enemies. You know, what these people, and in some cases entities, don't get is, you were all played big time. The illusion was this group and that group were enemies, is the often repeated boogeyman and the saviour program. And one day you will all realise the dark played both and all sides. Create nasties, then create another set of nasties, call one the light and one the dark, one is the boogeyman and one is the saviour. No, you are both energy harvesting batteries. That's how it works. All at the behest of the Destroyer. Well, the Destroyer is gone. It's the same like the mirror-created conflict called the Cold War. The US, America fought the SU, Soviet Union, and the SU fought the US, all of which was total bullshittery, all of it. There is or was no separate US or SU. SU is just US in the mirror. So it was not the United States fighting the Soviet Union, it was us fighting us. And the dark wins off both sides. So now the Destroyer is gone, who I believe goes by the name of Kal Karanjan, whose female counterpart was the Kali Ma and subsequently Lilith, who all tribal people have been taught to worship of and subsequently sacrifice to her. The same entities who all the Hebrew, Buddhism and Hinduism people are worshipping. The witchcraft people and their goddesses were all worshipping the Kali Ma and this dark Destroyer, along with the Dark Mother moon ritual based entity. This is siphoning off vast quantities of life force energy off the people participating in those practices, but also those who come into contact with them as well. It's a self-perpetuating virus. Now, with that entity out the way, this will now allow things to move on to the next stage. The key battles are being won, and won heavily, and the end game moves closer again now. The universe that was once 87% dark is now heading close to the balance of 45-55 now. Next piece. Some people may be noticing there's a lot less pigeons around the world, and this is due to certain ET species who are used to eating humans in their staple diet. They were offered a replacement and have now gained, thankfully, a taste for pigeons, replacing the human food source. Next piece. When you understand the term "let us make man in our image" in terms of not creation but genetics, as an imitation of them in their image, then you begin to understand the bigger picture here of what unfolded. Next piece. Not all large lights falling in the sky globally are meteors. Next piece. Expect a lot of buzzing, particularly in the right ear from this day forward. Embrace it. The G cloud and the GNA is near. The next piece is from today. The Rothschilds, who we'll get to again shortly, in cooperation with the Bank of England, HSBC and the Douchebag Bank, tried registering new birth certificate bonds of American citizens as collateral today, in the hopes of issuing cryptocurrencies against these bonds. Now, unfortunately for them, and they seem to have a lapse in memory, as they have forgotten they had already issued these bonds previously and sold them to the trust. So when they tried to issue them, they came up as duplicates and were rejected. Now, somewhere in the neighbourhood of 1.5 trillion were attempted this morning, and the clowns also failed to realise that the bonds were dollar denominated and therefore would still have required the trust's approval. Only the trust can issue the dollar notes. And subsequently it would have been denied anyway. And the reason it would have been denied is it would have devalued the dollar drastically, which is what they're trying to do now, and completely crashed the economy. Now, clearly, these people have the same half-wit economists as Anna von Reitz. It beggars belief.
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Unbelievable. Last Friday, following a call from one of the leading Rothschilds, the third in line, which was expected, like I've said, they all have to come to us eventually. And he gave several confirmations to us in a direct and also indirect way, including about the destroyer entity but he also revealed that they were enemies of the Order of the Black Sun and should work together. You know, these people are failing to get yet, but are learning. There was elements within the call, as they were all paired off against one another. There was no boogeyman, only a carefully constructed false enemy or opponent, all manipulated from on high, like a giant video war game. This is what's been going on. Now, all of our calls are listened to, but Kim's in particular sets off servers all around the world the minute she answers her phone. So all and sundry were listening in on the call, which may well go down as another event and another shot heard around the world. Because Mr. Rothschild's turned round and said, quote, "The RV GCR was a carrot for jackasses." Jackasses. Oops. This has got the generals globally, agency people globally, and all other minions around the world, all of whom had bought into this program. That was not only physically impossible, but it was a plot to distract the jackasses. Oh dear. All those so-called top people are now very pissed currently, I hear. But I'm going to say thank you to Mr. Rothschild for telling the truth for once. Maybe now the world can move on and actually do something useful together. You know, as for the jackasses, it serves you right. Because a simple check of the plethora of systems you have and had at your disposal would have told you clearly this was all a ruse. But your greed overtook your common sense. And as for the minions et al., you can cry all you like at the Roths, but like the general populace, we've all fallen for the oldest trick in the book. So I guess your IQ of over 40 doesn't work too well when greed and control becomes the dominant feature. And as for the military people, you are even worse. Kissinger told you all those years ago what he thought of you all. Quote, "Military men are just dumb, stupid animals to be used as pawns in a foreign policy." Unquote. And then you get the classic from SpongeBob man, John Kerry. Education, if you make the most of it, you study hard, you do your homework, and you make an effort to be smart, you can do well. If you don't, you get stuck in Iraq. Like we say, time always tells. This show and my previous show, I stated the RV was not possible. Kim has been telling you all, including the so-called top dignitaries, the same thing for the last 4, 5 or 6 years. Perhaps now you will all listen to us more. Truth prevails in the end. The RV was a carrot for jackasses. What a classic line that. You know, forgive us for our bit of schadenfreude, but the point is, you've been taking the piss out of the people for a long time, and a bit of payback time for the people is in order.
I was walking down the road and I saw a donkey.
Hi all and welcome back. And oh dear, it's it's sad and funny in the same context. Carrot for jackasses. And that last song said it all. When you're talking to yourself and nobody's home, indeed. You know, these people are beyond stupid and need to be returned to source pronto for their own benefit. You know, their thinking levels are beyond absurd. And this is despite receiving the best schooling, inside knowledge and various other advantages, and yet they are still at banal levels of stupidity. They are still repeating failed programs, following dead people, thinking their fake gods will come down and save them, and waiting for American dollars to arrive from the higher dimensions to fund the RV. I kid you not. And they call us nuts and conspiracy theorists. You know, all those people were told in the meeting what is the new directive. They were all told very clearly, and yet they go on with their fake RVs, fake fresh air tokens, fake control systems, wasting vast resources to block things, including putting people in banks just to block a transaction, sitting there 24/7, getting several of their servers and systems fried, and yet they still don't get it. That Rothschild should have looked in the mirror when he called out jackasses and the rest of his Draco offspawn family also. In case you fail to understand, listen carefully, jackasses. You gave all the riches and the assets away to the trust. You gave all the power away to the trust. And we're not giving it back for you jackasses to waste again.
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
You have lost. Get over it. Right, op-ed pieces. The next piece is brought to you by Clown Think Tank Retards, going back to 1966. That's not to say there was no previous to that. We had where several of the "we're all gonna die" previously via the biblical Armageddon bullshit. But this is some of the things came from a post on Facebook this week. In 1966, these clowns warned that oil would be gone in 10 years. 1966. In 1967, a dire famine forecast by 1975. 68. Overpopulation will spread worldwide. 69. Everyone will disappear in a cloud of blue steam by 1989. 1970, they went to town, but there's several. World will use up all its natural resources by the year 2000. Urban citizens will require gas masks by 1985. Nitrogen build-up will make all land unusable. Decaying pollution will kill all the fish. Killer bees. There will be an ice age by 2000. American subject to water rationing by 1974 and food rationing by 1980, all in 1970. In 1971, a new ice age is coming by 2020 or 2030. 1972, new ice age by 2070, so it goes back. 1972 again, oil depleted within 20 years. 1974, space satellites show new ice age coming fast. 1974 again, another ice age. 1974, ozone depletion, a great peril to life. 1976, scientific consensus, the planet is cooling, famines are imminent. 1977, Department of Energy says oil will peak in the 1990s. 1978, no end in sight to a 30-year cooling trend. 1980, acid rain kills life in lakes. 80 again, peak oil now being pushed back to the year 2000. 1988, bit of a gap there. Regional droughts will happen in the 1990s. 88 again, temperatures in DC will hit record highs. 88 again, the Maldives Islands will be underwater by 2018. They're not. 89, rising sea levels will obliterate nations if nothing's done by the year 2000. 89 again, New York City's West Side Highway will be underwater by 2019. Now it's just the financial people who are underwater. 1996 brought a further extension of peak oil will now run out in 2020. Then we get into 2000. Children of the future won't know what snow is. 2002, famine in 10 years if we don't give up eating fish, meat and dairy. 2002, peak oil dropped back down again, now to 2010. 2004, Britain will be Siberia by 2024. 2005, Manhattan underwater by 2015. No, don't. 2006, there will be super hurricanes. And then we never had any for 8 or 9 years. 2008, Arctic will be ice-free by 2018. 2008 again, climate genius Al Gore predicts ice-free Arctic by 2013. 2009, climate genius Prince Charles says we have 96 months to save the world. 2009, UK Prime Minister says 50 days to save the planet from catastrophe. 2009 again, climate genius Al Gore moves 2013 prediction of an ice-free Arctic to 2014. Then in 2013, the Arctic ice will be free by 2015. 2014, only 500 days before climate chaos. Oh dear. The saddest thing about all this is people keep believing this shit. And it is what happens when you don't pay attention and don't see the patterns. You know, they're not very original. They always repeat things because people keep falling for the same crap as why. And the day most people realise that the government, schools, medical, science, religions and people's services are not there for your benefit, but actually to harm you, then we'll see a real change on this planet. You know, these fear-mongers, that's all they've done. Fear, fear, fear. Of course, that creates a certain energy, and the harvesting people have a field day on us. Now, the next three pieces are all about the children. Some good, some not so good. A documentary that has been focusing on India showed children of 5, 6 and 7 years of age out working in the hot sun. And you've got to remember, in India it's not uncommon in the summer anyway to have 120 degrees Fahrenheit, and the kids are making mud bricks. Now, in the documentary, the factory owner was asked, why aren't these kids in school? And he replied, they cannot go to school until the debt is repaid. Until then, they are my property. Yes, you heard that right. Because in India, the debt transfers from parents to children. So if one of your relatives got, say, a payday loan years ago, which was at the standard annualized interest rate of 5,000%, then all relatives beyond that point would become slaves of the loan holder until it gets repaid. Of course, as you know, it will never be repaid. So the loan holder legally owns the kids, and subsequently their kids throughout time and pretty much forever. And yet millions of people around the world are enamoured by the enlightenment of the Indian culture and spirituality, whilst they're running children as payday slaves, of which 7,000 of them die each day. The Kali Ma lives on under the banner of spirituality and enlightenment, it seems. That has to be stopped. That's something I'd like Trump to deal with. Any countries doing that to kids, don't trade them. Just cut them off. You know, you can do it to Iran and North Korea, who neither of which are a problem, and yet India gets away with all kinds, and so does China. In fact, we're not exactly looking after kids in this country, never mind those either. The world of medical again. And according to recent data from the FDA, has revealed 6,370 adults have died from a drug currently being used to block puberty in transgender children. Now, between 2012 and June the 30th of this year, the FDA documented over 40,764 adverse reactions suffered by patients who took the Lupron, which is used as a hormone blocker, and more than 25,500 reactions logged from 2014 to 2019 were considered serious. That included 6,370 deaths. It's interesting now that the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, are now highlighting this drug, given it was the same organisation who actually approved it. Now, this drug is also on the list of essential medicines by the World Health Organization. Go figure. Essential medicines that cause 6,370 deaths. But the problem is, will the FDA and the World Horror Organization be held accountable for these injuries and deaths? Answers on a quark particle is probably the answer. A recent study of 1,600 children done by scientists told the story that 98% of children are born with and carry what is called the genius gene. I told you, they come in with everything. Which is genius level intellect of creativity. By age 10, that is reduced to less than 30% of the children. 68% drop within the first 10 years. By age 15, less than 13%. By age 20 to 30, less than 2% still have the same gene. Why? Because of their poisons, and also because they educated it out of us. Education means training of animals, and they have destroyed by that point the most creative, intelligent species down to the level of animals. Going forward, it's about teaching, not educating. Going forward, the teaching of soul development awareness is a must for future development of our children, for the overall development of the species also, as the consequences of not teaching them is why humanity has regressed backwards in terms of development and also intellect. We also need to teach a real understanding of karma, the consequences of it, and not just pass it on to others via the Day of Atonement ceremonies done by the Hebrew and Hindu and also Tibetan group. We're going to need to teach them real spirituality, which is individual based, not groups. All groups, spiritual or religious, are corrupted by the dark elements, and I mean all of them. Meditation time and classes would make children grow again. Spirit knowledge and awareness. We are not alone also. Teaching the above without stating we're not alone becomes a muted and stunted exercise of dancing around things. Facts and truth, not assumptions and logic. And we can only do that by scrapping the current education programs. We've had enough of their animal training. The animals they called us are now waking up and are tired of being treated like dead animal carcasses, and the whole system is a complete joke. And what we're going to need going forward is access to the private schools all the elite children go to, that then need to be rolled out into charter schools first, and then eventually public schools for real development. 98% of children are born with a genius gene, and by the age 20 to 30 it's down to 2%. Hi all and welcome back. This between now and the end of the show is packed with information that's not been readily available. There's chunks of intel in it, and this came from documents I've received or been sent, and also some downloads. And it's going to get interesting. Well, the first piece is not related to that, but this is something I came across this week on the mystery of the unknown island in Hawaii, known as Niihau, Niihau, and it's a small island no doubt few of you have ever heard of, myself included. Now the island is where no one has been allowed to go on the island since King Kamehameha the Fourth sold it for $10,000 in 1863 to Elizabeth Sinclair of Scotland. The Sinclairs or Sinclairs of Rosslyn Castle fame. Scottish Rite group. And she has passed the private ownership on to her descendants, which is the Robinson family. Now the island is generally off limits to all but the Robinson family and their relatives, plus US Navy personnel, SSP. certain government officials and invited guests, giving it the nickname the Forbidden Isle. Sounds like Epstein Island to me. Now, since 1864, guaranteed full-time work for the inhabitants was supplied by the Niahu Ranch, and natives also fashioned Niahu shell lei for luxurious jewellery. But in 1999, the Robinsons closed the ranch and said it admitted that no profit was being made from cattle and sheep ranching, processing of charcoal and also honey on the island. Now today only part-time work is offered to the few, with local tourism and a small US Navy installation. Now, as said, this particular island, the US military has been an important source of income for the island, I'm sure it is, and for decades has run special operation training programs and even research and development of top secret military defense systems. Research and development are not the two words I would call it personally, as we will find out later. And it is estimated that only 70 permanent residents remain on the island, which is a considerable reduction since the last census in 2010 that put the total at 170. And the main reason for the exodus, they say, is unemployment since the closure of the ranch. I would say that closure of the ranch was an island takeover for other nefarious purposes, personally. Next piece, the summer of 1974. This will shock some. A large and highly unusual ship set sail from Long Beach in California, and it was heading for the middle of the Pacific, where its owners boasted it would herald a revolutionary new industry beneath the waves. Equipped with a towering rig and the latest in drilling gear, the vessel was designed to reach down through the deep dark waters to a source of incredible wealth that was lying on the ocean floor. But amid all the excited public relations, there was just one small hitch. The whole expedition was a lie. And this was a Cold War deception, they say, on a staggering scale, but one which also left a legacy that has profound implications nearly half a century later. Now, the real target of the crew on board was this giant ship was a lost Soviet submarine, it was said. And 6 years earlier, the K-129 had sunk 1,500 miles northwest of Hawaii whilst carrying ballistic nuclear missiles. The Russians failed to find their sub despite a massive search, but an American network of underwater listening posts yes, they're all over the ocean floor, had detected the noise of an explosion and eventually led to US teams to the wreck. So the CIA got involved, no surprise there, and hatched an audacious plan called Project Azorian to retrieve the submarine. That would have been hard enough, but there was another challenge that went on at the time, that it had to be done without the Russians knowing. These people are stupid. And the spies needed to create a smokescreen, so they pretended to be exploring the possibility of deep-sea mining. And of course there had to be a front man, someone who was rich and eccentric enough to be plausible. And the reclusive billionaire inventor Howard Hughes was put forward for the role. And it took until 1974, 6 years after the sinking, for the CIA to be ready, and the cost of the project was $500 million. The equivalent back then to building a couple of aircraft carriers or launching an Apollo mission to the moon. You know, this is kind of what's gone on. I'm wasting the public's money. Because when you realise and know that the CIA and the KGB worked together during the whole of the fake Cold War, this doesn't appear to be as cloak and dagger as it once sounded. The real reason they did this, and yes, the Russians knew, you know, they were terrified those weapons would get into others' hands. It's all about fear and control with these people. That's what you have to understand. The enemies are just fake. And 500 million of American taxpayers' dollars wasted because of their fears and their control issues. Next piece. In From Russia with Love, we asked questions: were the Germans duped? Or was there a separate group to Hitler? And we based this on the notion that Hitler was delivering the narrative of the blue-eyed blondes being the ultimate, the master race. Except there was two problems with that statement. One, he wasn't blue-eyed blonde to begin with, which makes absolutely no sense for a so-called egotistic megalomaniac, as the world perceives, as ultimately, under the narrative that was pushed forward, he would have had to wipe himself out, as he wasn't blue-eyed blonde. And two, why did the Nazis then attack the Poles, the Slavs and the Russians, many of whom were the master race, Aryan and blue-eyed blondes? It made no sense. And we also put forward this was an attack on whites, mainly, done by totalitarian creep. One word split into three, which means destroy the Aryan. But perhaps this piece from a document will give you a bit more clarity. Now, Hitler's system argued that the blue-eyed blondes were the master race and should rightfully rule the world, although mainly due to the concept at the time of political correctness, since the US was championing integration and race equality. That is yet another example of the light and the dark, the boogeyman and the saviour, and it's all BS. And people look down on Hitler's argument that the blue-eyed blondes were somehow superior, and it should be noted and also recognised by the masses that the United States, not Germany, used the same genetic selection system when it was fighting Hitler. So here's what came out of the document. If you go back and find some colour pictures of men in the US Navy during the 1940s and also the early 1950s, you will find out that they were all blue-eyed blondes. All of them. Oops. And they're not just blue-eyed, but the special blue eyes, what is known as azure blue, which sort of shines as if it was lit up. There were no exceptions. And people do not seem to realise that the different US armed forces were populated with specific genetic types before the services were ordered integrated. The Air Force also, like the Hitler model, SS genetics. Incidentally, the SS is a schematic symbol for the double helix of the DNA molecule. Told you we'd hear a lot more about genetics, and this is not the last either. And the army was for the lower genetic classes, which means brown eyes and not necessarily white skin. So there you have it. From Russia with Love series confirmed again. The illusion was that there was an enemy and that we were the good guys when there was no enemies or good guys. Just pawns in a programme of let's eliminate the whites, connected to the Great North, the Ers and the Rus. They taught. Why? Because they were the most advanced humans ever on this planet and a threat to the dark forces. Now, for further confirmations of our series, and in particular from Russia with Love 8A and C, is when you find out that Zen is mind-thought based. And Zen derives its name from Zeus. Well, Zen Master is also another Ophiuchus term. Remember their word for guardian was master. This next piece is gonna not please people. But everybody by now are aware that the secret and various orders all carry code words. That means much to them but not much to us until they service and come into the light. And then suddenly everything makes much more sense. Now, apologies ahead for using certain words stated in this piece, but it does bring a certain understanding of how they operate and also think. Now, there was a famous doctor who had won awards and international recognition for his research on the eyes using dogs for destructive testing, it was said. And this particular person saw him at a party, and as it so happened, she had a sick dog with some kind of eye trouble, and approached the doctor and asked him for his advice, since he was so famous for his dog research, and was hoping that this doctor would help fix her dog. What she got in return left her speechless when he replied, "Dogs? I don't know anything about dogs. We don't use dogs for the eye tests. We use niggers. Niggers are better than dogs." Dog was a code word for black people in these research facilities. Research facility has a whole new meaning than the majority think. Those research and development facilities are death and torture centres, and there's a plethora of them. And it was said in this way the doctor was, pardon the pun, able to operate in plain sight, and even received public awards for his research. Of course, the people with the code word clearance knew exactly what dogs really meant. Except the general public was clueless. And this is how they use these code word clearances, and it works in everyday life. And the Lord came down and changed the language so people wouldn't understand it. Makes much more sense now, doesn't it? Now, I've read this before, but it's a timely reminder of the plots of the dark forces using pawns to do their bidding. And given what's happened today with the Intel and the Rothschilds trying to play games with the birth certificates that they've already cashed in once, the plan to convert from real currency, which was gold and silver, to imaginary currency was inherently sinister. And essentially they're describing mirror money. It looks like money, it spends like money, but is like the mirror, only an image or a likeness of such. Now this was a quote by Edward Mandell House, who coincidentally was involved with the Treaty of Versailles that we covered recently, and also the drafting of the Covenant of the up-and-coming League of Nations, and he also set the stage and the groundwork for the Council on Foreign Relations as well. Nice chap. And he said this in a private meeting with the then US President Woodrow Wilson. Very soon, every American will be required to register their biological property in a national system designed to keep track of the people, and that will operate under the ancient system of pledging. All those pledges went to the trust, unbeknown to these elitist clothheads. A trust they didn't own. By such methodology, he said, we can compel people to submit to our agenda, which will affect our security as a chargeback for our fiat paper currency. Every American will be forced to register or suffer not being able to work and or earn a living. They will be our chattel, and we will hold the security interest over them forever by operation of the law merchant under the scheme of secured transactions. Americans, by unknowingly or unwittingly delivering the bills of lading to us, will be rendered bankrupt and insolvent, forever to remain economic slaves through taxation, secured by their pledges. And those pledges are what the trust is returning back to the rightful owners, by the way. Not Rothschilds or some other half-witted clown. Back to the people. The clown went on, they will be stripped of their rights and given a commercial value, designed to make us a profit, and they will be none the wiser. For not one man in a million could ever figure our plans, and if by accident one or two would figure it out, we have in our arsenal plausible deniability. Yeah, that plausible deniability met his ultimate death 2 years ago, the former trustee. And these clowns are still running that failed program platform for a dead entity. Seriously. You know. He went on, after all, this is the only logical way to fund government, by floating liens and debt to the registrants in the form of benefits and privileges. This will inevitably reap us huge profits beyond our wildest expectations, and leave every American a contributor or to this fraud, which we will call social insurance, social security. Without realizing it, every American will insure us for any loss we may incur, and in this manner every American will unknowingly be our servant, however begrudgingly. The people will become helpless and without hope for their redemption, and we will employ, listen closely, quote, the high office of the president of our dummy corporation to foment this plot against America. Can it be more clear than that? The president of a dummy corporation owned, they say, by the US. Nice play on words. The corporation is actually owned by us, not the US, United States, us, we the people. And it's going back to we the people. And that's what we have to achieve with our goals going forward. Like I've said, they, the US, like the banks, own nothing. All of it was stolen off us by the US. one giant trick has been played on us all, not just the people, but the clowns also. They are the three-ringed circus. They gave it all away to the trust, thinking it was always going to be in their hands. Wrong. A little next piece is a little in the way of some past, our story. The Hu people, that were a tribe from ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, that were descendants from the dark plains in the second dimension, and they were called the Tarzaks. Now, in ancient days prior to 16,000 BC, in Earth years, they existed in the third dimension, and the Hu warlords were a descendant order of the Ra king Ishtar. Next piece. When people spend their lives doing bad things, constantly plotting to hurt other people and cultivating hate and the like, what happens is the aura gets damaged, the PSI field, and the person suffers in general. And this is where and when disease and also possession and walking kicks in. The holes in the aura or the PSI field facilitates that. Now the elite, of course, like to do all those things, but they don't want to suffer the natural consequences of their behaviour. Therefore, with periodic use of what is known as an aura balancing equipment tech, they can lead as evil a life as they want, as they still have a perfect picture PSI field and enjoy excellent health. And essentially, this is how they have effectively defeated the law of karma, it is said. So what they've been doing is they've had access and using machines to clear their karma. But people who develop their own skills don't need machines. Machines are for the lazy and less developed people, which is what these elites clearly are. Their desire for external riches supersedes the development of their own internal riches, of which no amount of money can ever buy. And no matter how hard you try, that's why whenever you see a Rothschild or a Rockefeller, they all look like miserable bastards. All of them. Because they spent all of their lives chasing external riches, and eventually they'll realise it was all pointless. So they've been using advanced technology to clear their karma. Question to ponder, based on hidden technology available to them but not to us. I wonder what happens if you find out that no famous person has died since the 1960s, and all of them are in vast underground cities, and the famous people on the surface are all copies. Next piece. There are many changes, the true nature of which you will probably never guess. But in preparation, the earth for the proposed new world order, the satanic overlords, who run this place have decided to make certain changes in the past. But most of these reasons for these changes are not obvious to the masses. Now, I've mentioned previously that certain ETs don't like smoking. And here is why the shame and guilt program that the stupid people ran for them was implemented. Excuse me while I smoke. What people won't know is, for example, consider nicotine. Many will not know that nicotine was the main active ingredient in insecticides for many years. That started in the late 1800s. And what did it do? It kills insects instantly. Oops. And you would think, fine, let's continue with that natural-based product. No. Why? Because since the elites developed secret relations with the off-world entities, some of whom are insectoids, bug-eyed bastards, nicotine and therefore cigarette smoke is harmful to them. Oops. And the use of tobacco products has never been permitted in the secret underground cities and installations because in these protected areas, aliens are free to mingle with humans. Now, this generally was the case. At level 6 and further down is where the commingling occurred. As I understand it now, humans are banned from going below level 6 currently. However, under agreements, aliens sometimes desire to move on the surface, disguised as humans. Oops. And this led to the new movement to have smoking-free cities to accommodate these desires. You can't make this stuff up. I kept telling people in the 1990s it's nothing to do with your health. And this tells you what I've been saying. They walk amongst us regularly, in particular areas where smoking is banned. And once you can see one of them, you will see more. And no, they will not be coming up to you and saying, "Hi, hello, I'm an alien." So my saying, a smoke or several a day, not only keeps the reps away, but the bug people also. Next piece. This is something everyone can now look out for. One of the MK Ultra tactics and used by rogue ET elements to get people into their order is the eye implant. Now, this has been noted by the alt media around the world, of the famous people, all with their left eye blackened. That is due to their implant. This device is a vril device to wrap around the optical nerve and eventually the brain and onto the spinal column as it grows for a complete takeover of the vessel. This is essentially what Elon Musk has been promoting this week with brain implants. And he needs strapping to one of his rockets that frequently blows up and hurtled into space, in my opinion. You know, these are not new gadgets, these are old gadgets, and they're not easy to remove. They're just not. I have tried. I did get one away, but they're not easy to pull out, as it connects to everything else. And essentially it becomes like a crown of thorns around your head, and it's very, very nasty and controlling. Now, if you notice the Illuminati symbols and symbolism where they cover up the left eye and then do a circle in front of the eye, apart from that being a symbol of Ra and the son Horus, it is also the eye implant sign or codes they use. Now, as a spotter for human-looking ETs, they have what is called a lazy eye. One eye is bigger than the other, clearly defined. And once you can see it, it all becomes all so obvious of who's who. Those crown of thorns are nasty, real nasty. But if the Allies are that stupid to buy into it, then far be it from me to stop them. Next item before the music break. There has been a big push, particularly in America, and it's happening in Europe as well now, to remove lead paint from homes and all previous traces of it. And people think it's for their health. That's funny. Their health. Nope. Lead paint is another good example of how they convince the masses that they are interested in our health, when the evidence is all around you that they really don't give a monkey's shite about our health. Now, recently, local police have been provided with what was previously classified technologies, and it includes portable X-ray devices that can look into people's homes from the outside. Notwithstanding people being that stupid of putting home security, Alexa machines and smart fridges, etc., which are all spying and recording devices, except the government, the military and the agency people have been using X-ray satellites to watch people inside of houses and buildings from as far back as the previous century. Oops. So what's this got to do with lead paint, you may ask? Well, since lead blocks X-rays, it was important that they had to get rid of lead paint, otherwise these spy devices could not effectively operate. So there you have it. So the removal of all lead paint was not for our benefit or health, but to further their agenda of spying on us. All sing along now. I see you through lead paint. Oh my. Hi all, and welcome back to the final portion of tonight's show. That's not the last of the revelations. There's a bit more to come. The as above, so below applies on the astral and physical realms, and so subsequently is another trap or a spell cast. The same as saying, I'm going astral traveling. What you're doing is limiting yourself to that realm. It is a spell cast and subsequently a trap. Now, what exists on the physical plane or realm is replicated in a slight varying form on the astral level. Now, this confuses many, as they think that they're operating in the physical world when they are actually inhabiting the astral copy world. When you go daydreaming. And this is where what is known as the Mandela effect really takes effect. Like I said, there are subtle differences for the critical questioning minds, and once you ask the questions in the copy realm, that construct falls apart. People have reported whole buildings going missing. You know, a whole German Nazi base appeared in the middle of the Australian desert a number of years ago, and then just vanished into thin air. And then people turn around and find the building or lose it altogether. And what this is the merging aspects of the two worlds as the veil thins at various intersections of both space and also time. Things appearing and then disappearing, which is a classic encounter with UFOs, is part of this merging and then uncoupling process that is occurring simultaneously on the different planes of existence, which I will cover more in the next piece. And it's part of their greater plan to cause maximum confusion, leaving the majority of people of not knowing whether they are coming or going, what is east or west, what is up or down, and consequently what is real or not. Now eventually that confusion will end and things will become a whole lot clearer. Nobody knows the date for that. What will be, will be. And I may go into this a bit deeper in another show. The final piece tonight is another example of thinking this was done for this reason when it's actually done for a whole completely another reason, a bit like the lead paint and the smoking. But if you look back in history, does it not strike you as strange that the people of Earth went from riding horses and reading by candles or kerosene gas lanterns, etc., to our current world of going on trips to the moon, satellites flying around the world, and also being surrounded by every conceivable type of electronic gadget in less than a couple of generations? It makes no sense. From the perspective of history, this is a strange anomaly. When you look at the length of time that other evolutionary learning processes took, nothing like this has ever happened before. So common sense should tell you that there's a missing part to this story, something that would explain this unprecedented jump in not only technical evolution, but also point to interjection and other interference as the reasons why. Back in the 1940s, some decided to add sin to the mix. Sin means knowledge. And a deal was struck on what is known as seed knowledge, S-E-E-D. And that was introduced in the early 1940s. And it was stated that a decision was made to take a chance with the people of Earth and provide them with certain seed knowledge that they could use to raise their developmental level to a certain point, where ultimately it was said that they would become an entrance level advanced civilization and be able to interact with other advanced civilizations from other parts of the physical universe. Now, quite who decided this on our behalf, without getting any feedback from the very people it affects, is largely overlooked, it seems. and is also part of the arrogance that has in some cases been displayed. Now, essentially every technology we enjoy today was derived in some way from this seed knowledge. So representatives came to Earth to deliver the seed knowledge and discuss the potential and future evolution of the people of Earth, which all sounds very good on the face of it, humans being developed, but our shows have shown that there's always a hidden agenda, and so it was. What they don't or won't tell you was that a lot of this knowledge and technology came from previous human-based civilizations like the Rus, and not a potpourri of exotic ET species as we're led to believe. Now, the agreements were made, and that the seed knowledge was stated was not free. And in order to obtain it, the representatives of Earth had to agree that the knowledge was to be used for the benefit of all the peoples of Earth, and to promote their positive evolution and development. What could possibly go wrong with that? Well, the Earth representatives were made aware that the seed knowledge did have a potential for abuse. Go figure. And that they were required to promise not to abuse it. And they were also warned that there would be penalties if the knowledge was used in any manner other than the positive and constructive manner they had agreed to. Now, it was explained to the representatives of Earth, which were military, agencies, bloodline families and governments. In other words, they gave it to the worst elements of our society. I wonder what possibly could go wrong with that. That violations of this agreement would result in punishments and also sanctions, and could possibly make it necessary for the providers of the knowledge to correct their mistake by destroying the planet Earth, in order, they say, to protect the peace of the universe and comply with universal laws. Nice people, not? So they make a decision for us and select their choices to deliver this seed knowledge. But if it goes wrong, we all die. Oops. Because they messed up with their selections. It's a bit like the FDA and the World Horror Organization with the drugs. No accountability. And this is a major problem on this planet as well as outside of here. Just don't think for 1 second these entities are any better or more advanced than we are, because they're not. Fancy technology does not make a species more advanced, but actually less advanced. Because technology is a lazy-based non-development tool. But the distinct lack of accountability, and the same applies with the latest viral BS, climate change. Does it not? You know, if the climate is changing like these clowns are telling you, that is down to those who ran industries that are responsible for causing it, which the bloodline families and their clown minions. So if climate change is real, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the DuPonts, the Morgans and the Bushes are wholly responsible for that mess. And if it is real, they should pay to fix it. As we know, climate change is another bullshit attempt by them to stay in control. That's what it's all about. Staying in control. Collecting resources off every country under the UN via the Paris Climate Agreement. Now, part of the seed knowledge was there was prohibitions against nuclear devices, and it was also explained to the Earth representatives as they progressed that nuclear detonations cause disruptions in space-time, which can be detected by any advanced civilization and traced back to their source planet. They are considered bad form and should not be done. So, let's ignore the fact that these so-called advanced ETs were the ones responsible for bringing that weaponry here to begin with, which they did. After they destroyed their own planet, Nibiru with it, aeons back. But heaven forbid if the stupid humans rattle all the other planes of existence where these fake gods and goddesses resided. There is a war in the heavens, they say, as above, so below. So the war is here, is what it means. And it appears war on here was not such an issue in the past, but since they became trapped on the plains, suddenly now it's a bigger issue, as war with nuclear weapons here rattles their planes of existence. See how it works? Now, where it went wrong is certain agency-based scientists got interested in the time distortion side effect of nuclear detonation and trying to get the secrets of time. And so they kept blowing up these bombs until they figured it out. And then, having worked it out to a degree, not fully, they then quickly got a world ban on all new explosions in order to keep the others from learning what they knew. This is the clowns in Las Vegas. Yet again, status and dick swinging games again. We have something the others don't. It's utter delusional thinking that America was getting one over on the Russians, and the stupid Russians thinking they're getting or doing things better than the Americans, when the reality is you are both being played in a pass the idiot parcel game, where the illusion one won and one lost. No, you both lost. Subsequently, as we know, Earth has not become the global advanced civilization that was intended. In fact, the Earth representatives chose to break all of their agreements and used the seed knowledge to set up a global dictatorship, which is now commonly called the New World Order. All done by the same entities that gave it to them in the first place. They played I'm the chosen one or the leader, whilst the hidden entities played let's harvest everything from them. So a news flash for the clowns and their minions. The New World Order was not for your benefit. And I will repeat again for the hard of hearing, the New World Order was not for your benefit, it was for theirs. And despite your fake titles of importance, all of you were irrelevant. Oops. Although it is pleasing to see and hear, at least some of you are now seeing through the illusion. Now, it is said that if they had kept their agreements, the general population of Earth would not know poverty or disease now, and would be free to travel and visit other advanced civilizations throughout the universe by this point in time. There we go again. is the classic "here's what you could have won" tactic and guilt and shame tripping exercise, cleverly and deviously enhanced by the religious programming. The point is we produce enough food per year to feed 3 planets, 3 Earth-sized planets, and yet so many starve. That's not an accident. That is a direct policy. And it was stated this was the hope and intent when the seed knowledge was handed over. However, as with any gamble, sometimes you do not get what you want despite your best efforts. That's just more lies. Because the hope was we all failed, and these dark harvesters looted the whole planet and then destroyed it because we were set up to fail. Like they've done to many planets previously, including their own, I might add. And yet we think these entities are better than us. The seed knowledge, as they called it, is now being dispersed in a better way by many people around the world. They're losing the narrative badly on many levels. An example this week of why they threw Prince Andrew to the wolves in this past week. He is the sacrificial lamb to protect higher up the chain. It's how it and they work. But the lords, the kings, queens, the generals, the chosen ones, the bloodlines, the Pindars, the emperors and the empresses, the nobles and the nobility, and every other fake title you were given as a distraction. All of you, and I repeat, all of you, were pawns in their game. Pawns in their game. Oops. Their game no longer exists now. It's gone. And you were all blinded by your own stupidity and self-importance. You look and act like what you've been labelled. Clowns. The giant circus production that you all thought you ran, not realising you were the figure of fun under the canopy. A canopy that you built for them. And they sat back in the gallery and laughed at you and subsequently us. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Bye for now.